Hussein, do you just want to like start talking about what your plans were to beat the heat?
Oh, beat the heat.
We're beating the heat, so we're going to do a recording. It's going to be a good episode. I'm going to go home. I'm going to fill up my bin with my wheelie bin with lukewarm water. I'm going to take out half a can of Monster. That is the right kind of. It's not too fizzy. It's not too flat. I think it's like the perfect consistency.
Yep.
And I'm gonna chill out and watch the sun. Watch the sun go down while drinking my my Monster Energy Zero Sugar Original. Things are going to be great.
A vivid, sort of intrusive thought of a champagne bucket filled with ice and open cans of Monster. Just slowly dissipating carbon dioxide.
And Hussein's just sitting in his bin with water up to his nipples. Hey, you know what? He's going to enjoy that if fucking two-tier Keir doesn't come in and make it illegal.
True. Yeah, that's true. Because Keir Starmer is, two-tier Keir is he's going around and he's like preventing people from having fun in the sun.
They finally found something that rhymed with Keir. It only took them years, but they finally did it.
I was really hoping it'd be like no fear Keir, like if Keir took up like skateboarding or something.
My favorite is Sir Queer Harmer. That was a thing that's been kicking around in trans circles for a while, and it's it's so contrived it's almost funny again.
This is also kind of why, because my thing is look, if Trump gets elected in November, things are going to get like demonstrably worse for the world. It's not to sort of say that like the Democrats will be in a better, but we know for sure that like things will just get massively worse. However, and this is a very, very nuanced caveat, I was looking forward to the name that Trump would give Keir Starmer, and I did think it would be Queer Starmer.
It's entirely possible.
And I want that to still happen somehow.
No, I'm not. No, you're telling me more about you than you're telling anyone about me with that hurtful name. Hi, everybody. It's TF. We're beating the heat English style. We're all in the ice.
Beating the heat.
We're all sitting in the bins full of water. We're enjoying our lives here. But we are joined by returning two-time champion. It's Brian Merchant going for the twofer. Brian, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm just fine. Thanks, guys.
We are going to talk a little bit about an article you've written about. We like to talk about like, here's what AI is going to do as it comes into different industries, right? You've now written an article saying, okay, well, games is basically the one that it's penetrated most. Here's what it has already done. However, before we get to that, I wanted to explore another angle of a little bit of critical tech talk, a little bit of UK politics, which is that Elon Musk has declared war on the United Kingdom. That's right. It's another whoever wins, we lose situation.
Yeah, I saw like a former senior executive of Twitter in the pages of The Guardian this morning saying that Elon should be arrested. And listen, it's like I said last time, I love it when the authoritarian state defends itself against the right. I want Keir Starmer to send the SAS to Texas to extraordinarily rendition Elon Musk. I think it would be funny.
Because Elon is so pickled by belief, like he's now posting like fucking like the meme of like the girl on the couch surrounded by the black guys. You know the meme.
Yeah, but it's the same thing he always does, right? Yeah. Which is that he gets into a little like red-pilled Nazi posting spree, like embarrasses himself, and then tries to like post his way back out of it again after he like loses the sort of situation he was concerned with, right? Like civil war did not happen despite his best efforts, and so now more posts. It's exactly the same thing he does with his kids, right? Like functionally he is treating like the UK like one of his kids, right? And that it's like it's not doing what he wants, and so he's just going to complain about it as loudly as possible to his Nazi friends.
See, I think what would happen is if the SAS came to Texas, to Starbase Texas, to extraordinarily rendition and arrest Elon Musk,
doing the Call of Duty Black Ops Cosmodrome mission in Texas.
Yeah, it's just like, he's like, oh, you're not going to arrest me. You'll be too busy giving your pronouns. And then they would just like grab him and take him into a helicopter.
Well, what the fuck kind of name is Elon anyway?
Now, Brian, you've watched this happening from the States, and you've watched like Elon basically like, not just Elon, but Elon and Twitter, obviously, because those two are as one, basically wade into commenting on the race riots from the perspective of, oh, this is a sort of a combination free speech issue and like parroting every sort of standard British right-wing talking point. Like, how does it look to you from the other side?
Yeah, I mean, he's given himself a chance to lose it even more than he usually does, because he obviously knows nothing of the history or the context or the actual politics or what's going on. He knows basically what Ian Miles Chong is tweeting at him in the replies, and that's basically his entire political platform.
Even further away.
and that's what we get here. But he's also, what's unique now, it's been bad for a long time, but when he came out, I think that he thought that after somebody took a shot at Trump and he was almost assassinated, that like that everybody would come out for Trump, and that it would be this big patriotic moment, and he could safely just kind of reveal himself as just a right-wing troll through and through. And that like didn't really happen. So there's this particularly embarrassing window where he was like, I'm donating all my money to Trump. Trump is, he's the future of him. And then like 2 weeks later, he's like, oh yeah, did I say I was going to give $45 million a week to Trump? No. Because he's just such a creature of intuition, and his intuition is bad. And it's been wild to see him just like dig deeper in it, because he towed the line for pretty long. And now we realize that it must have taken more effort than we knew at the time for him to restrain his very worst impulses. And now that there's not even any semblance of that, he's just tweeting with Andrew Tate, and just Twitter's just a far right hellhole. It's always been a hellhole, but now it's just a reflection of the id of Elon Musk.
Andrew Tate's gonna like show Elon Musk around Britain, and they're gonna like take him to Hemel Hempstead for like the worst like house party of his life.
They're both gonna punch that guy.
All I can say is that now every like hagiographic mention of Elon Musk in anything, but particularly like Star Trek, is getting funnier all the time.
Can I tell you what's getting funnier all the time?
Elon Musk's daughter, who is outposting him on Threads, bizarrely. She's like the one sort of like USP of that app.
By the way, also what you said earlier, Brian, about Elon Musk not donating money to Trump's campaign, I'm afraid you're actually wrong. He didn't say he's not going to do it. It's just delayed until October. And then when October rolls around, it'll be delayed until February.
We call this an October lack of surprise.
This is how he rolls. This is how he's always does this. It's how we ended up with Twitter. Except they roped him into actually buying it because he said he was going to, and then he had a fiduciary duty to do it. But if he had his way, he would not even own Twitter right now. Imagine that future.
Twitter forcing him to buy Twitter has to be one of the like consequentially worst but funniest things to have happened.
Could not agree more. That's so true.
Trying to style it out, entering the building with the fucking sink.
So embarrassing.
And just like, he's gonna be in the fucking like newly relocated Texas Epic X offices like the fucking Fuhrer bunker in a few months. It's gonna be like the SAS are gonna be outside, and he's gonna try and end it with the like foam replica Cyberpunk 2077 gun,
What's so funny though, right, is that he say, oh, the UK, it's a lost society. It's been lost for years. No one can govern it. This and every previous administration was terrible.
So true.
And it's like, wait a minute. Weren't you the guest?
Proving him wrong by presenting him with a champagne bucket of open Monster.
Wait, hold on. Weren't you the guest of honor of Rishi Sunak's AI conference like 6 months ago?
Yeah.
Like it is darkly retrospectively funny that 6 months ago, this is the person who is, again, like just stopping just short of continuing to like incite racial hatred in the UK, was like applauded by the party whose job it is to make that 1% more circumspect and 1% more like amenable to liberals. And he just, that one little veneer of respectability that the Conservative Party tries to put over British fascism, he's just ripped down.
Yeah, I hope Keir goes full authoritarian about it. Set me free, ban Twitter, you know? Like, I forget, I think Egypt maybe just banned Twitter for like, no, Venezuela, fuck. Yeah, it was, just go full Maduro, just ban Twitter for like a week and a half, you know, just to see what happens. I get a vacation from posting. Elon Musk gets to go like even more insane. I'm not seeing a downside here.
So one of the main sort of drivers of this, of course, because we haven't really talked about the aftermath of the riots, which, you know, appeared to, at the time of recording, so heavy caveat here, appear to have like largely fizzled out, at least in much of England. They were sort of they were proceeding in like Northern Ireland as well.
Kind of watch this space. I think you can attribute a lot of that to like rapid community anti-fascist organizing, right? I mean, obviously the state's going to attribute it to the police, and partially, but like not as much as they think.
Did you see that Stella Creasy's being GoFundMe'd a massage?
Why are they so creepy? This is like the fucking when Marcos Malitzas tried to like brought Nancy Pelosi a room full of roses. Like, why are they like this?
Yeah, no, it's like Stella Creasy had nothing to do with this at all. But there was a GoFundMe created to buy her a massage.
Cool.
It didn't get as big as Marcos Malitzas sort of trying to drown Nancy Pelosi in roses. But the
just trying to do the shot from American Beauty to like a 90-year-old woman.
So, right, one of the aftermaths of this, in addition to, like, as you say, November, it being countered by huge amounts of like local anti-fascist organizing throughout the country of people just like in Brighton, you know, like a few people gathered and ended up having to get protected by the police because there were like 8 of them.
I was in Brighton and I ended up not going to this. My apologies, because I was reliably informed that the entire city kind of had it covered, and then 4 guys showed up and got surrounded by the cops in order to protect them from the rest of Brighton.
Now, of course, this mass politics event where these riots are stopped, their momentum of them is taken out so far, largely by local community organizing, has to be kind of processed by the British media and political class.
Bear in mind, the 2011 riots, like, okay, the scale was bigger, but like the criminal penalties, the sentences that were handed out, like dwarf anything that we're seeing here. But we are getting some repression, right? And I think you're entitled to have mixed feelings about it. I think you're allowed to be like conflicted about Keir Starmer locking up like Britain's most racist 12-year-old or whatever. On the one hand, but on the other hand, but on the third hand, you know. But like, I think it's chiefly in the sort of the PR sense. This is a real case of like the CPS and the police being kind to themselves, right? And being like, we successfully deterred more of these by locking up the like woman who was like drunk and like pushed a flaming wheelie bin at us, you know?
Or the officers did at one point rush to arrest a man who was yelling, "I'm English."
Yeah,
These
I mean,
days.
we've had some moments in police comedy, right? Like much like AI, the police can never be good, but they can be funny. And so we did have the guy who was like fighting the police and yelling, "I'm fucking 70," and then one of them said, "Why are you at a fucking riot then?"
You mentioned November. This is something I think it's also worth talking about from the perspective of like social media companies, Twitter, Elon, and so on.
Yeah.
Which is that one of the main laws being used to put the rioters in jail or just riot-friendly people in jail for posts, you know, is the Offensive Communications Act, which is, you know, and
which is a mess. Like it fully is. Like
it was used to like arrest the guy who like mocked Captain Tom.
These days, you know.
And I think one of the worries, right, or one of the parts of Elon's crusade, you know, and why he sort of posted a picture of Peter Griffin in the electric chair. I hate that this man is politically relevant, and that like I have to say the phrase in like the actual politics discussion segment. So he posted a picture of Peter Griffin.
I'm like, every time you mention him, I'm like upgrading from the SAS to like triple tap drone strike, you know?
He says, you know, oh, in 2030 for making a Facebook comment the UK government doesn't like with, you know, Peter Griffin on the electric chair, following up with of course, if Facebook even exists in 2030.
I hate this stupid cunt so much.
Yeah, and he did it. This is what he did. He bought his way into relevance. This has always been, since his first companies, and since he became a Twitter addict, he just his entire prerogative was just sort of was ensuring that everybody had to listen to him. His memes were always bad, his posts were always bad, but he could not accept that fundamentally. And you could argue that that has been his primary crusade, is just buying up as much at least a facsimile of credibility as he possibly could, to the point where you have to talk about Elon Musk posting Family Guy memes as part of the context of the race riots happening in Britain. What a future we have here.
Because of course the mop up here, right, is that Elon Musk is now sort of feeding into this. It's like, furor that the days after the race riots, a number of your sort of standard right-wing British political commentators, some of them tried to get off the bus. Some of them might have examined for one moment their complicity in what happened. The Daily Mail and the Telegraph tried to say, oh, hey, 2 cheers to community organizing against fascism. Just forget what we said about the black shirts earlier. Everyone sort of had to do that for about a minute, right? And now they're all able to turn around and say, okay, we have our new thing that we're angry about, that we're organizing around, which is that we're scared that we're going to go to jail for wrongthink. And it's like, well, wait, hang on. Number one, yeah, as you said earlier in November, right? The Offensive Communications Act is a mess. It puts a lot of people in jail for posts, and it's most likely, this is I think one of the more anti-carceral sort of opinions about it, is that it's most likely what's going to do is it's going to take a bunch of Facebook moms and turn them into a fascist prison gang, essentially, by just putting them all in prison, an incredibly sort of violent and traumatizing experience that, guess what, makes you more violent and traumatized. But again, it's not the hardened ones, the posters. Facebook moms.
I mean, you can deter stuff like this and interdict stuff like this by really bringing the hammer down, but you have to actually do that, and it means you have to take it seriously. And this is a government that really wants desperately to sweep this back under the rug, right? So even to do the repressive thing, I think it is possible, right? In the same way that you can't now be in Al Mahajarun, right? But you have to get the security services and the police and everyone to take the thing seriously in order to do that, and that's just not something they're capable of doing with right-wing extremism like that.
I think it's a legitimate concern for. I mean, one thing you can do is you can kind of look at what if a law like this existed in the United States, and you have I don't know what sort of the infrastructure on the right is like in the UK, but we have entire people, organizations, and accounts like Libs of TikTok that single out people who post things that they don't like, and that go to PTA meetings, parent teacher association meetings, and school boards, and they have all these different things. I could with sort of the thirst and the fascist tinged sort of right-wing political movements happening on the local level here, all those moms that you're talking about, I could see a law like this getting weaponized pretty quickly. And it's look at what Elon is posting on one side of it right now, but the minute that there's an opportunity to wield it against his enemies, you can guess what he's going to be in favor of all of a sudden.
With all of this soul searching, sort of the half hour of soul searching done, having pivoted now to, okay, the government is now making it illegal to have right-wing beliefs. And it's like, well, wait, which right-wing beliefs? And the ones. A number of people are starting to show a lot of quite high power levels, such as Will Tanner, the Tories need to appeal to younger voters guy, the Theresa May burning injustices.
That seems like a perfectly ordinary point of view that couldn't conceal, anything horrid.
Well, the guys who are the being lauded again by the New Statesman or the Guardian or whatever as the people who are bringing the Tory party into the modern era. Now that they're out in the wilderness, they have to look at.
Don't call them the Great White Hope.
They're now sort of wish casting about fucking Rhodesia and the Oranjestad in South Africa being not racist. Yeah. It's just people making a nice community where this kind of thing wouldn't happen.
But it's like we said last time, a lot of people got very excited, including Elon, right? And thought that things were going to go much further with this than they seem to have done, and are just now is the moment to really take off the mask,
And with all of that being said, right, if we're looking at who's getting arrested, who's getting punished, who's still on fucking television, right? And who is named as the powerful
so far,
enemy.
they seem to have like swept up the kind of like usual underclass, you know? Like, admittedly, who seem to have been doing the stuff. Like, there's body cam like footage of them, like, you know, throwing the fucking wheelie bin at the cops after like 8 ciders or whatever. But all these people's solicitors get up in court and say, like, they're not racist. They just like wandered off the street after like, you know, 5 morning ciders or whatever, because alcoholism is like one of the major like unaddressed things here, and got arrested for the like 23rd time. And it's like, well, yeah, this is like, it's reflexive action, right? And it's something that was like very easily done, and yeah, I guess it's a deterrent in that sense, but like, you're not really going up against any of the kind of like organizational capacity here, which means it can all happen again.
Exactly.
It's also just like a refusal to acknowledge that organizational capacity exists, right? Because like,
sure,
the feedback,
well, exactly,
the sort of like aftermath, and like when the sort of commentators sort of realized that like, oh, we can't be seen to sort of endorse them, well, they made the calculation to not to, then like the next step was to just be like, oh, these people aren't, you know, we don't, you know, they may have like, I think the furthest they went was like, you know, they may have like legitimate views, but we don't agree that they should express them this way. To which like a lot of the response was just like, oh, these people have thrown us under the bus, which is why it's sort of amusing in a very kind of bizarre way to sort of see like right-wing ghouls who have sort of spread or who have expressed their sentiment that they wanted exactly this to happen, to be told to go fuck themselves by the people who either support it happening or who participated in making what they wanted happen.
Yeah, and I think the limited hangout here is going to be like Tommy Robinson and maybe Elon Musk, you know? Like, maybe they will be able to do some kind of sanction against Elon. I don't know what. It'll be funny if they try.
Wait, do you see the other opinion that Musk has, which I believe is going to be shared widely among British columnists, because I think he's kind of leading a lot of them at this point on their response to the riots, which is to post like, hey, in all of everybody's favorite children's books and movies that we read and watch all the time, like The Hunger Games, you're on the side of the rebellion, but now all these progressives are on the side of the empire. Yeah, in Busy Town, you cheer for the worm driving the bus, but in real life, you cheer for the imprisonment of the race rioters. Make it make sense.
Damn, he's got my ass there.
But what we've seen, I think, is a crackdown on sort of the people at the front who are the least important in terms of like making this happen again, in terms of the fascist tendency in Britain. And instead, what Starmer is choosing as the most important enemies are, or columnists as well are choosing as the most important enemies, Starmer, one of them, is tech CEOs and Russia, rather than the columnists who've been calling for this for years.
It was all Putin.
Yeah.
I if only we'd known this sooner.
It's like deja vu from the way that liberal politics has operated in the U.S. for the last 6 years, right? That's blame Trump on Putin, blame it on
Putin. Yeah. It was always him. Even when it wasn't, I knew it was him.
And also, it's like, rather than traditional media, rather than columnists, rather than the people who are driving all of the people insane.
Nadeem Zahawi is trying to put together a bid to buy the Telegraph and like lure Boris Johnson back. Like, if you want to know how, like, and like part of the deal that Labour made to get in power was like no more press inquiries. Don't need them. Like, we don't need another Leveson inquiry because it's all solved now. Don't worry about it. And in return for that, they got a cautious endorsement from the Sun and like a week of race riots.
Yeah.
One of the worst business deals.
Look, we are desperate for a prime minister who's good at deals, and there's only one world leader who's good at deals.
Just getting Trump in as prime minister after he loses the election.
I hate the little apartment.
very, very shitty door.
The light switches. I've never seen one like this before. Look how they want to make me live. I hate this country.
It's still so funny to me that he tried earnestly for about a year to be president from home because of how much he hated the White House.
Yeah, the winter White House. We all remember the winter White House. But I think this is something you see on both sides of the Atlantic as well, which is it's so easy, right? When you are unwilling or unable to alienate the normal traditional media, it is so easy to make the main focus of your blame social media. And I think, look, it's also worth saying, by the way, right? Like, no, like fucking Elon Musk absolutely benefits from the conditions that lead to the race riots, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I mean, Twitter has become basically a more populous 4chan right now. It's so schizophrenic looking at Twitter at any given time. There's like people doing, weird AI boosterism. There's just like the sort of content that would show up in a mass email in 2004 forwarded by your uncle going on. And then there's just like, rabid right-wing frothing sort of stuff of the sort that's been spearheaded by Musk. And it's funny that they finally got a right-wing platform this way. The conservatives complained endlessly that Facebook was censoring them, Twitter was censoring them, and now Musk has just by sort of deposing the former Twitter and just kind of installing himself, now sort of by fiat there is this major right-wing forum, or at least it's sort of like governed and the policy is set by a right-wing forum. And then anytime that there's activity like this, and I honestly, it's such a shit show. The fact that somebody who knows nothing about, recent British history or the context of any of these things that are happening can just sort of get some knee-jerk memes and weigh in and then really just push it. You can see the extent to which his views are being shaped by his sort of most influential followers. I mean, he's constantly just going like, is this true? Like, is this true? Like, is half of English pedophiles, is this true? Community notes, is this true? Like, and he's concerning, right? And then he's just he's casting around. He has no really set political beliefs besides grievance, just like most reactionaries. And so he's cultivated this entire sort of ecosystem that responds to that, is driven by him, and so responds to him. And as we said earlier at the top, then people have to kind of at least acknowledge him, if not take him seriously. And then, like you said, columnists and politicians have to respond to him. He owns this entire platform that is still very much the place for better. And I don't know how to move these goalposts. I don't know how to change this, but nobody's like posting their acknowledgement that they're dropping out of the presidential race on Threads or on Blue Sky, right? It's still Twitter. So like we have to reckon with the fact that like this is the de facto, I'd kill me for town square or whatever that he calls. This is like the place where the information is disseminated. So like, what do we do with that? Every time there's one of these things, it just bolsters Elon's case. And anytime there's an event like this that he can frame in this way, and that millions of people are happy to see framed this way, it sort of just kind of reinforces what Twitter's already become.
And beyond that, right? It's also good for the economics of the thing, right? It's if you need to like try to make the case to advertisers, and by the way, basically declaring a kind of like at least trade war on the UK, while at the same time declaring war on all your advertisers. Yeah. I don't think it's the civil war that Elon needs to worry about.
Yeah, because I push back that I don't know if it's good for economic. Maybe he seems like he's almost given up on it being like economically viable. He's maybe going to find another way to do it. They're really pushing subscriptions. So, I mean, maybe what ultimately happens is people are so disgusted that they eventually leave.
He doesn't seem to be promoting any of the stuff that Twitter is doing, right? Like Twitter's introduced a couple of new things.
Elon's not like, check out this free mobile game.
Well, like not to sort of be like, because like there's one function that I see on X where it's like you can search through like your tabbed favorites, right? Like your bookmarks and stuff, and that can be like a useful thing. Like not to give him credit, but it's like that can be a useful thing. But he's not sort of boosting that or sort of saying that, hey, Twitter is or X is a great place for you to do like these things, and like if you want to use it as like a general app, or the way in which these apps used to sort of be promoted, which is it doesn't matter like what you're interested in or who your friends are and all that type of stuff, like this app will be great for everything. He's not doing that. He's just sort of going all in on kind of really reaffirming that no, this app exists if you want to be racist and people hate you.
It's just I've made this joke before. It's not even my joke, but I remember what happened to the last guy who tried to get me to pay to post in his forum. And The trajectory so far is marrying up at an uncanny level.
You go back to talking of advertisers, right? Like, how, other than trying to sue them, because if you remember, Elon was forced to buy Twitter by being sued. I think he wants to sue his way out of the problem by now saying he's going to sue his advertisers. But if you take it all back around full circle, right? You know, he's posting like a fake Britain First article about detainment camps in the Falklands for patriotic Brits, or saying like, you know, civil war is inevitable in the UK.
I mean, you like the Falklands so much, you fucking go there. It's a funny idea. Like, I'm sorry I wrote that article, all right?
It's like, if incompatible cultures are brought together, conflict is inevitable. Just saying again and again and again, like the rioters, the race rioters had a point.
The funniest thing, by the way, just in real is that like Elon's on there going there like race war is good, and you know, retweeting all the worst memes in the world, and then like the CEO of Twitter's on there going like
Linda Yakawako.
The discussion is great, like 3 exclamation points after 2 spaces, just like, yeah, Twitter, the #1 place for your news. It's all happening here.
It's all happening on X.
Just the most.
Here's a like sort of a conspiratorial thinking, but I wonder whether he was sort of egging on a race riot or like egging on like a civil war type of thing. Because if it did, like in a hypothetical world where it did happen, he could be like, oh look, Twitter was the app that predicted that. Because you know, like remember like the what you call it, fucking like the Arab Spring, and how like Twitter really used that as a sort of like way of promoting itself as like, oh, here's like a useful app, and this is the reason why it's so much better than like the mainstream news. And I wonder whether he was really trying to hope that something like that happened so that people would sort of like see validity in X.
Maybe, but honestly, I don't know. That might even be giving him too much credit.
Yeah,
honestly, I think more than anything, he's just like in a K-hole, just like posting like whatever is enraging him at the moment, and just sort of like letting it rip, and then thinking about all these other things as an afterthought. Because it is always funny when he comes down to earth for a second. Like the other day, I shared this on Twitter. He like, even it was like after like 6 race riot tweets, and then he's like, somebody told him that X was like #1 or #2 on the news app, and then he like shared this little certificate he made that it's like X is #1 on the App Store. Like it looked like it was made by like a graphic design is my passion kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
and you know, bringing this back right, it's to the advertisers, is that the way that he wants to bring advertisers back in the wake of having like, you know, essentially, without going so far as to say it, cheered on race riots in the UK from the platform. He's asking like, hey, HSBC, why don't you put your like new mortgage product next to this tweet of me saying like, you know, send them back or whatever. Yeah, definitely be good. He's suing like a sort of like advertising trade body, saying, "Oh yeah, it's an antitrust issue if you tried to like use like tools to keep your ads from appearing next to like, you know, someone like live streaming a mass murder," right? He's already gotten one organization doing that, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, GARM, like one of these like, you know, trade bodies, right? Like
on the one hand, it's deranged. It's like the most deranged case you could possibly make, like suing them for not advertising, for not paying him money to advertise on his platform. It's just like such a non-starter that like the legal case, like even our repulsive Supreme Court's not going to let that fly. But on the second hand, again, it kind of works. One of those trade bodies disbanded after he sued them because they would rather not take the heat put on them by Elon Musk than deal with it, than deal with the legal fees, than deal with like the fallout.
I mean, this is basically how libel works in the UK. It doesn't matter if you did or didn't libel someone. If someone brings a charge against you, they can force you to defend it and cost you an enormous amount of money. And so he's doing this, as you say, his wealth acts in some ways like a kind of collapsed star that, and he used to have, if you remember like 2017, 18, he used to have a reality distortion field where he could just sort of get away with whatever. Yeah. You know, what he got away with, we sort of learned a lot more about in that time. But, you know, now what we're basically seeing is, oh, yeah, that was just money. That was just a huge amount of money. That was just enough money to implement and fight any frivolous lawsuit he wanted to bring. Who could imagine bringing a frivolous antitrust lawsuit? That seems very expensive. And to take it again all the way back round, it's like we talk talk about the role of traditional media in amplifying race riots in the UK, and they're certainly the primary culprits. But, this is also someone who was like the place where people are organizing, the place where people are sharing a lot of those opinions that are formed by traditional media, where the stochastic call to engage in race rioting is answered. A lot of that is social media, and a lot of those and a lot of that, like those communication channels, are like in the hands of someone who is just, as you say, Brian, just wants to be relevant in this way. It is willing to subject anyone to whatever to do that, and you can see like what it took to stop like this like very like loose and unofficial alliance of columnists, tech CEOs, street fighting fascists, and like think tankers and whoever else is in like this sort of modern tapestry of the like global like sort of nationalist revanchist movement in the sort of North Atlantic. It took a huge amount of people to like come out and clean up his fucking mess. It does make you angry when you think about it.
It's gonna happen again and again, and in a place that he knows even less about, that he has even less of a frame of reference, whatever that sort of catches his eye now, he and can sort of it'd be like a viable arena for him to wade into. That's either entertaining enough or just like pushes those buttons where he gets the serotonin hits from posting the memes. Like it's just going to it will happen again. And I don't have any answers or any solutions.
President Maduro, my social network, Twitter.com, yearns for freedom from this Burr extremist.
It yearns for the guiding hand of Jack Dorsey.
The serious risk of this is actually like in places where Elon is still sort of considered to be kind of godlike, right? Because I feel like obviously like in the Anglosphere, the sort of this as he's sort of been stupid and people are kind of aware of his stupidity, that maybe have waned. But like places like India, I think are sort of things to watch, because the moment he sort of comments on that, bearing in mind what is happening in India, the fact that like the anti-Muslim sentiment is really, really turbocharged there in a way that like makes this country and the States kind of like very meek in comparison, but also just like the real veneration that they have for like tech guys, but Elon in particular, that to me sort of seems like a tinderbox where like where an Elon intervention could really kind of have some very nasty material effects.
It's a really good point.
All he needs to do is just like remember which side he's more bigoted against, and yeah, it's true though. It's like the as you say, he was saying, the places he has torched his credibility among some people, but unfortunately he has a way to go before he torches it among everyone else. Any case, I'd like to move on though to your article, Brian, on how on gaming and AI in the gaming industry. And before we start, I want to read you probably the most hyper-exploited sentence that has ever been written. Ahem. Electronic Arts admits to using AI in its Sports College Football 25 release.
That there's so many nested layers there,
So, this is the press release. This EA press release. This was the writing. EA utilized photo imagery for 11,000 players along with machine learning to generate a head, which was then manually touched up and enhanced. They said, we were able to take in a whole plethora of photo imagery across these players and build out workflows where AI and machine learning would generate head, which is very amusing. They would generate head, and our very talented artists would then be able to come in and touch up and enhance head versus having to go through the full head development program.
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think?
I love to enhance head.
Yeah, Brian, what do you think that the very talented artists, based on your reporting on the games industry recently, how do you think those very talented artists were doing? How do you think they were employed? What do you think their job was like?
Oh yeah. I mean, the same way that any artist is going to interface with AI in an initiative like this. It just means that they're gonna. It's more assembly line, less human work, less touch. I mean, it's just going to be more volume, worse conditions, all of the things that make the job interesting sort of starting to get stripped away, and more of an emphasis on doing more of this shit. So like this is obviously alluring only to a middle management or an executive somewhere that has calculated that they can generate head with 30% more efficiency if they use AI rather than actually having human artists sort of do it. So yeah, I mean, it's just the exact fear that everybody has about this stuff beginning to materialize, and it's happening in sort of like the murkier corners where it's a little bit harder to say like, oh, this great artist we all know is being automated away. It's these jobs more on the corners that are out of the public eye directly, and yeah, they're going to be forced to work more, harder, longer, and do just worse shit to get by.
And I mean, being a sort of an artist in a gaming and a game developer was not like a picnic before this.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's already a hard job and one with few protections. And I mean, that's the thing, right? This is where we see AI like flourish or be used the most in industries that have already, seen a battering ram taken to them by executives looking to sort of gut protections, or they didn't exist in the first place, right? Gaming, famously non-union, at least in the United States. Lots of sort of cycles where you have a job for 9 months and then you don't work for 4 months, and you rely on these word of mouth sort of job openings and relationships with people, and it's really already precarious, as you said. So it was been very hard for unions to get a foothold. I mean, now, almost ironically, we can talk about this more later. Like the AI threat is a catalyst for organizing in a lot of corners. So maybe that'll change. But yeah, do you think about like Sports Illustrated using AI slop in its articles? That was only possible because a 20-year process where it was degraded, cost cut in the normal ways, sort of moving from reporting to blogging, online contractors versus staff jobs, and then the end of that process, the AI can come in and flourish. So you have studios that have fewer guardrails, bad work conditions, and that's where you see AI taking root right now first.
So Andrew Wilson, the CEO of Electronic Arts, said, "In the absence of AI, we simply would not have been able to deliver college football at the level we did, even though we've given the team many, many years in development." Basically saying, yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, this exploitation simulator doesn't work without way more exploitation.
Yeah. There's a setting that says pay college athletes, and we've permanently turned it off. You were not able to pay them even in the game. Let's talk about your article, right? The games industry itself, $200 billion dollar value, more revenue, more profitable than ever. It's also going through a period of like tens of thousands of layoffs. Partly because, and this sort of, I think, echoes sort of things we've talked about recently when we've talked about like sort of what is driving corporate decisions around like what they're doing with their staff. It's all Wall Street, right? It's Wall Street heard of AI and was like, oh yeah, use that to lay people off, please, so we can get paid fatter dividends. And it has always been hyper exploited because, as you've sort of mentioned earlier, there's very low union penetration. There's a lot of subcontractors, and also it's like anything, it's a vocation, and any vocation, like people who run those companies long ago learned that people will accept bad conditions to do something that they love. It's why teachers are having to live in cars in Britain now, right?
Yeah. And that's used as leverage against the employees. Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing preventing the AI from being used or these mandates, and we can talk about the ways that it's showing up. A lot of times it's kind of like a combination of this top down sort of. So I leaked some emails from Activision CTO, and he was basically said, "You've been cleared to use these AI tools to the entire companies in these contexts." And then Activision, of course, is like the almost the top of the food chain. It's been, it merged with Blizzard, and then both have been acquired by Microsoft now. But then underneath that, there's a bunch of studios that either just like work on one game or work on one. So they can interpret these directives differently and loosely. And so people who, as you said, have been doing this vocation for the love of it. I mean, a job as a concept artist at a games company was sort of a dream job for so many people. And they wouldn't, think about asking for more protections, more, I'm writing another story. It might even come out as we are recording this podcast about the animation industry. Same deal. AI is starting to penetrate studios making animated works, and a lot of workers in these fields have just not been conditioned to sort of think about their rights or fighting back because of this. They've been told this is a dream job, like you're lucky to have this job, where else are you gonna do do it. And that's why in some of the biggest studios and the biggest companies like Activision or Pixar, in the case of animation, conditions are often the worst if you're not on the top tiers.
And, one of the things I think is also worth talking about, right, is that it's throughout your article, there's sort of one of the themes that I sort of kept seeing coming back again and again. I'm sure this is true for the animation one as well, is that people will be introduced to these AI tools from the top down, usually, right? That they will then often be like fired and then rehired as a contractor to come in and do prompt engineering or to like correct stuff that the AI fucks up. And it just highlights again that this is fucking terrible as a product.
Yeah.
Like even beyond, right, like the fact that this is terrible to work for, one of the reasons is that it becomes a terrible product is that it fucking sucks to do. It sucks to try and unpick a mashup of a bunch of similar art, some of which that might have been yours, that you might have done previously, to then sort of to correct an output, to try to get it to match something you vaguely had in your head. And guess what? How long before you say, good enough?
Yep.
That's good. That's good. This guy, college football 25, this Dan Smith, the quarterback from Brigham Young University, has a third nose, and that's just sort of fine.
Yeah.
No one really cares about Dan Smith, the quarterback from Brigham Young University. He can have a third nose. It's cool.
Yeah, no, that's it. There's, in fact, like illustrators and artists and creative workers have begun to talk about it in exactly those terms. It's the good enough problem. So it's nobody's worried that the AI is going to be better than them or make better product, or it's just that where it matters at points in the supply chain and management or an executive is willing to settle for less, and that's where they fear they become expendable. And I would say more so than getting rehired as a prompt engineer. People are, getting fired, departments are getting winnowed down. And then usually what'll happen is they'll come around and say, okay, all of you guys who are left, we've scheduled you a training session with Copilot or whatever. So you can learn how to basically automate your buddy's job so that you can pick up the slack now that they're gone. And then the person who was fired is now looking at listings, some of which explicitly say, new, character designer wanted, must have familiarity with Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And so like this is the cycle that's beginning to happen. And I think the $6 million question is going to be whether or not the AI is shitty enough that gamers notice and revolt, and all the people, a lot of these games, another place that AI is being used is in like skins and extra stuff that you can pay for. And are gamers going to notice that this stuff has gotten shittier and then just not want to pay for it, and it's going to start?
I mean, like, if you're like AI artist Solus, how much soul is going into putting fucking Homelander from The Boys into Call of Duty,
Exactly. And are you going to want to pay for that? If you realize that it's AI, you're like, is that going to and so are they going to take a hit? Is it going to affect the outcome of the game's development enough to where users are going to say this sucks, and then there's going to be a correction? Or is there going to be a new sort of baseline of mediocrity where the bosses have accepted that for some cost savings, they can produce games with less money, but just less human input, and everybody on every level is just going to have to get used to everything being kind of shittier? And I would say that's my great fear, is that they're, obviously artists are up in arms about this. A lot of people are up in arms about this. But if the gambit works and things are just kind of, there's a new normal of AI generated shittiness, I would say that, the real nefarious thing to do would be to knock down the price of some games and say like, well, if you don't want to pay, $70 for the new, God of War game or whatever, then if you want to pay 60 instead or something, then we can hire more creative workers or something. But so I don't know. It's grim. It was a grim article to report. And I'll also say that not one person on the artist side, I talked to, a dozen plus games workers, and nobody was like, AI is kind of cool, or I could see it in this context. It was like, I don't want to use this. I don't want it anywhere near me. Some of the on the coding side, on like the development side, some people would be like, on the engineering side, it can automate certain tasks in the code that used to take me longer to render certain figures, and some of them were actually okay with that. But on the artistry side, there's nobody that had a single nice thing to say about it. And in the animation field for this story, it's even worse. It is not even a nuanced sort of thing anymore. It's just people want it out of there.
It's because this is, again, I'm going to quote something you said subsequently. It's not just profiteering executives or firing people to cut costs. It's like the outrage it is there, but it goes beyond that to also and in so doing are trying to automate the arts, the things that we enjoy doing. These vocations. They are basically trying to take something that is a vocation and destroy it.
Yeah. And that's I wrote a newsletter that was basically sort of drawing from this piece, at least here in the States, made a pretty big splash because people feel strongly about it, obviously. And the reaction was pretty stunning. And I got, reached out to by people in fields where this is sort of creeping into in every way. And it really just kind of underlines the fact that there is no, at least moral or substantive reason for doing this. Why do we want to automate this, the production of the arts? It's only to save money. And I think most people would agree that okay, sometimes if you're making a product on an assembly line, or if you're, if you're coding software or something, or doing something that's unpleasant, which has always been the promise of automation, that it can do the dirty, dangerous, and dull jobs for us. That's the kind of stuff that maybe it would be nice to have to automate it away if it wasn't going to take somebody's job. But why? Why are we pointing this at industries that just sort of thrive on being made by fucking people? I get it. I get the outrage. There is no reason to be doing this as a society. It has no cultural or societal value to be eliminating this, to be turning this over to sort of automated, statistical number and text generators. Why do we even stand to sort of consider this? It should be a non-starter on a lot of ways. And unfortunately, the only way that you can really negotiate this in the workplace in the United States is with a union. And as you mentioned earlier, union density is low. Most creative industries don't have access to one. Where they do, like in the screenwriting industry, like the WGA, they actually did win pretty good protections because it's a similar reaction to the prospect of using AI. I think Miyazaki had that famous quote that really just encapsulates it. He's just like, AI, the prospect of using AI in animation, AI is just an insult to human life. Why would you want to do that? And I saw people at this rally that I went to on Saturday they were working people up because the animation industry is about to enter negotiations with the AMPTP, which is the Hollywood studios that WGA bargained with last year. And once again, the Hollywood studios want to, secure as much right to use AI as they can. So
it's quite interesting. Well, first of all, the Miyazaki thing, I would sort of extend that further because he's often said that why would people want to do this job at all? There's a lot of documentaries of him where he just looks so miserable and he just hates it. But he's and he said he said that he's going to retire 4 times, and every time it's I came back for another one. They got me just when I got out, they bring me back in, all that stuff. But the Japan example is really interesting because the animation industry there, there's a lot of as you can imagine, there's a lot of debates about whether AI should be used or not, and there's a lot of pushback in the sort of manga industry, which is not unionized per se, but it's very much state supported for the reasons that it's one of Japan's most most popular sort of export. So the conversations there at the moment are about how much technology can be used, because the amount of anime that is produced by that industry is huge. And so the requirement of using computers and using automated structures is sort of essential just for the output. But at the same time, again, very much the disposition of the people who create anime and manga are artisans, and we need to sort of protect this craft. And so it's interesting, those debates there, and how in one way they almost have the reverse problem where they sort of want to keep it as in-house and people focused as possible, but that also means that everyone has to work themselves to death for a chance to sort of make it. Whereas in the West, it's well, we're just going to give everything everything to computers. So we're going to like produce the biggest amount of shit possible. Also, everyone still has to die doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that, it's pretty much the same in the US, right? Like you already have to work yourself to the bone to even get a shot.
Yeah.
And it's there was a Netflix released like an animated short last year that had like the background animations were generated by AI, and it was an anime, and I think that a Japanese artist came after it pretty strongly. And it is interesting because there is, maybe because of the culture you're talking about, there is like a little bit more of an opening. There's a startup, I think I mentioned it in the piece, in Japan, to like auto generate like anime figures that even when it was mentioned just drew a bunch of ire here in the US. I don't know if you would like really get away with doing something like that and still have any sort of credibility in the arts. But yeah, and I mean, it is something that I hear a lot, is that people in other countries are more excited about AI. I guess the industries, for better or worse, are pretty dense, and they're tough industries, and they're concentrated in just a few spots. But so it's really a labor issue, not a technological issue. So it's
always seems to be somehow.
Yeah, always does.
It's weird how it turns out that all of these things that were construed as technical issues are always end up being some kind of political thing. I'm sure, I am 100% certain. You can
stick to sports. Why are we getting politics in our tech podcast? How excited are we for new video games? Right? Like I hear they're developing heads for college football at an unprecedented rate.
It's going to be all heads pretty soon.
We played the new NCAA, and like the heads are fantastic.
We played the new NCAA Buzkashi game, and let me tell you, they rendered the Kandahar Rough Riders so well. They should make a that's my new gaming opinion. It's nothing to do with AI.
We're not making a Buzkashi shirt until you sell the Avignon Pope shirt with the art I made like a month and a half ago for it.
We're gonna do the Avignon Pope shirt next once it's time for another drop of shirts. Look out for that, by the way. I think that's number one. Put a marker down. The next problem that looks like a technical problem, it actually will be a technical problem. Politics won't be anywhere near it. Not like all of those other ones that we've discussed every time before we've ever talked about it. And also, I just wanted to add as a capper onto that. Look, if we need to automate all of the arts and the sort of things that are fun in these vocations, so we can have more time to do the dishes. Which, by the way, it's too difficult to automate. So I want to read a little bit of your article. You say, when Noah saw the email, a wave of anxiety hit. It was spring 2023, and the artist was reading a message from the company's then CTO, Michael Vance, about how artificial intelligence is, quote, top of mind at the game publisher. Systems are being tested, but what we've seen thus far holds a ton of promise. There have been a couple emails like this sent to employees of the studio, which produces Call of Duty, among other things. A previous one had approved the use of generative AI tools such as Midjourney and Stable Diffusion for producing concept art. And it always comes like this very, very softly, right? Or later in the article, you also say, Andrew Wilson, CEO of Electronic Arts, the man behind the 10,000 heads, said in a quarterly earnings call that, quote, the fear of displacement of the workforce is something we read a lot about and we talk a lot about. But then he noted that in every revolution, agricultural or industrial, there, quote, has been displacement of the workforce in the near term and then meaningful increases in workforce opportunities over the long term. Our hope is that AI represents the same opportunity. Tell me, in the agricultural and industrial revolutions, what did displacement of the workforce in the near term entail?
Only good things. A peaceful utopia that we've been enjoying ever since.
Yeah, the enclosure movement happened when people were like, ugh, I'm so tired of all this common land. I wish it would just be enclosed so somebody could use a seed drill on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the thing that people, ever since I wrote the book about the Luddite uprising, right? Everybody's like, well, haven't things gotten better since? And you have to say, well, in some capacities, yes, but did there need to be decades of nonstop immiseration and child labor and people literally not growing to full size because they're working around the clock inside poorly ventilated factories where their limbs get crushed? Could we maybe have like imagined an alternate pathway to some of these things? And that's just in the case of something where you you could argue that some industrialization is useful. Like, what is the analog here? What great benefit to the economy, once again, is going to arise from automating the production of a video game? You know, what gets unlocked here? Like, is it more little like gig jobs where people have opportunities to like sort of color in the pixels, you know, getting paid piecemeal on some, you know, gig app that for video game workers of the future, since there's not going to be real jobs left in the wake? Like, I fail to see this. This is a crutch that executives, the pundit class, sort of the automation theorists always kind of rely on. Oh, well, that'll be painful in the short term, which one, it does not have to be. Like, come on, can we imagine alternate ways to deploy and develop technology that don't immiserate people? I think we can. We're big boys. Number two, it's just like, there's just some pablum that they say. It's not even true in every case. It's just an easy way to sort of dodge the question. Well, in the future, you know, this is just how it works. And it's just like some immutable law of nature that you have to endure a little pain for better things in the long term. But again, what better things? Now we are getting rid of the better things. People having jobs to make cool video games seems like something we want. Like, why are we introducing that a pain point right here? They don't have to explain that. They just have to say this line: pain in the short term, more economic benefit in the future.
And of course they'll never address it, right? Because the reason that they're deploying AI and laying off 5% of the workforce, which is what EA did like less than a year after that earnings call, right? Or when Microsoft lays off like just shy of 2,000 employees, at Activision Blizzard, like mostly 2-day like artists, right? When all of that's happening, no one is ever asking them the hard question of, hey, what happens when this thing runs out of training data? What happens when you want to make something that hasn't been made before? That isn't just a mission.
When the AI gets like prions, right, and starts generating horrible college football player heads.
When it starts generating college football player heads that are hard to look at.
Things that aren't good enough anymore.
Yeah.
Then I guess you just have to go back to more desperate people and be like, hey, do you want to be an artist again? Or for the first time? We'll pay you less, probably.
Exactly. And that's why this is really alarming, because that's exactly what will happen. And that is what has historically happened. This new technology becomes available that can theoretically reduce, the labor cost. They swing it like a wrecking ball into the social structure that has existed for generations, or has existed that is extant at the time of said swinging, and it falls to pieces. Whatever meager norms and protections that workers had relied upon are sort of cast to the wind, and when they come back and they realize, actually we can't do this. Are these college basketball heads fucking suck. Like, we need you back. But, times are tough now that there's like been a downturn since everybody kind of rebelled against all this shit.
We
can't
wasted
pay you
all
as
our
much.
money on something. I can't remember what it was.
Right. Yeah. So we've had some belt tightening. Can you come back and do it as a contract worker? And again, that process is what we were already talking about. That's cyclical. That's what happens in the Industrial Revolution. They didn't eliminate workers. They made it so that a child could do the job and put themselves in danger and run the machines instead of somebody who was skilled and knew what they were doing. So it's just, it's de-skilling. It's tearing up it's a way. It's doing exactly what Uber did. It's a way to use technology as a battering ram against regulations, protections, laws, and norms.
And by the way, we're talking about like these technologies as, they're going to be bad in the future, right? They're not going to work forever. In fact, when they start running out of new training data, they're going to start either eating what they've created, or you're going to stop being able to create new things. That's actually not quite true, because they suck now. This is another thing you mentioned in the article, which is that, like, it turns out trying to correct the output of an AI as an artist is way more fucking difficult than just making something new, right? You cite an example of Riot Games hiring someone. This sort of went slightly viral on X, the everything app. where, this is where an artist at Riot Games, this person is like asked to like do some like AI correcting essentially, and says first round of pictures of a sweeping aerial forest landscape come through and it's not bad. They submit a ton of work and it's mostly okay. So first round feedback goes through and I tell them about the perspective mistakes, color changes I want, layers that any matte painting will be split into. Within a day I get 5 variants. Not changes to the ones I wanted, but variations. Again, benefit of the doubt, I gave them
no object persistence.
By the way, you can't just do it, you can't redo it. You could never step in the same river twice.
Yeah, it can't be iterative because it's purely generative. Like,
and they say, when I asked to remove the people that have cropped up, they say they can't. And the AI doesn't have the eye to see basic mistakes, so it starts to overcompensate. So people appear all the way over the image, clearly taken from holiday snaps. Please remove the people, I said. What would you like them changed to? I don't care, I just don't want them there. But then they can't do it. The only person on the team who can actually use Photoshop hasn't developed an eye to see mistakes, and the only one whose background was a little photography gives me 40 progressively worse images with 4 wilder mistakes every time. This is 4 days into the project. So yeah, this is an example of AI falling at the first hurdle, because the point of creating art, and again, you may balk me, are video games art? For our purposes, yes, they are. What you're doing is you're imagining something in your head, and you're creating something by which that can give someone else the same impression you had. Art is a fundamentally communicative process. I have seen a landscape, and I am painting my impression of it so that you might feel what I felt while looking at it.
But like, what if I gave that to a machine that stole a bunch of YouTube videos and Facebook photos?
Well, indeed, right?
What's that machine's view on the world, like the guys making it are pretty sure it'll have one if they keep doing it enough, like
and so like it comes back to try to do art without communication. It's not just hollow and empty and non-compelling, it also sucks. It's bad because the communication is inherently jumbled.
I'm doing a kind of functional Miyazaki where I'm like, I strongly feel that this sucks ass.
Yeah,
I mean, why would you want that? Why would you want instead of rendering that landscape or that portrait that you see in your head, why would you want a system that you press a button and then it attempts to arrange from the sum total of data that it has analyzed that may be referential or useful in constructing the average conception of what that landscape would be? You are by definition sort of getting a dull average of a creative idea, and we should be aspiring to more than that, I think.
Especially now, right? There's a lot of the usual, right-wing talking head usual suspects in Britain are talking about fucking Orwell again. But if you want to know an actual example of like technology or something like Newspeak being used to actually limit the boundaries of what can be imagined or what can be communicated, it's fucking AI, because it means that it says, the only landscape that exists is the average one. The only person that exists is the average one, and that is now going to limit what can be communicated and what it is possible to make and what is possible to say. There's your fucking limitation. Not like, that we're sent Britain's most racist 12-year-old to like work on, the racist 12-year-old's doing child labor as an AI prompt engineer.
Listen, I don't think any children should be forced to work, even the most racist one in Britain.
It's worth mentioning, just as we sort of close down because we've gone over time here, is that we spend a long time saying here's the impact that AI will have in industries that it's rolled out in, and now that like gaming was the most aggressive to adopt it, animation and films are probably some of the second most aggressive. We were right. This is exactly what we said would happen, and this is exactly what happened. And so, like, if you see it coming into your workplace, resist it any way you can.
If you see it, honestly, reach out to me. I have I'm trying to keep track of as much of this stuff as possible. I'm in touch with folks who are organizing against it. I may be able to, point you to some resources. But yeah, absolutely. Try to throw up the speed bumps, resist it, do what you can. You will find almost invariably that if you speak out about this, that people agree with you, not your soul sucking AI, generative AI loving boss. So yeah, it's definitely out there. It's definitely coming. And I think it can be resisted. I think we're at an interesting moment where it can also successfully be resisted, as the WGA writers showed us too. So yeah.
All that being said, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It is always a blast to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
And,
Our pleasure.
yeah. And, do check out your various social feeds. You may have a little project dropping soon, I hear.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, for now, though, bloodinthemachine.com. That's the book. It's the newsletter. It's where I'm doing most of my stuff right now.
Nice. Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Sorry this one's a little bit late. We'll see some of you in Edinburgh in a couple short days, and then back to regularly scheduled programming. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.